pleasure to invite William here to deliver a presentation in our seminar about the UAV multiband radar for tomography use. Okay, William, it's with you. Thank you.
No worries. Right. I'm going to bring you all back down to earth. I think we have too much time in space, so we're going to come all the way down to earth. In fact, we're going to go down below earth as well. And that's all. So what I'm going to be speaking about is using UAV multiband radar and tomography to identify and delineate burrowing animals. Interesting, but you'll see the concept in a wee bit. Surveyor, that's your worker. I'm the managing director of Surveyor. What we do is we work on climate change science across generally all of these areas that you can see on the screen. I'm not going to go through them, but effectively we're looking at infrastructure resilience, planning and development, food security, transport and logistics, and what we tend to do is assess, manage and adapt and monitor. And we use the UAV multiband radar as one of the tools to help us achieve that. But we don't just do UAV multiband synthetic aperture radar. We've got a whole range of tools under our belt. Typically the kind of standard stuff on the left, we do all of these things. The two key things that can probably differentiate us from most of the world is the UAV multiband radar, apart from yourselves, obviously. But we also do measurement and quantification of greenhouse gases using laser-based spectroscopy, either on drones or ground-based aimed at drones. And we're the first organisation globally to be able to achieve that. If you want to speak to me later on, that would be great. There is a theme here, which is the UAV multiband synthetic aperture radar. It helps us with the calculation of the biomass and the greenhouse gas measurement and quantification. Allows us to determine and quantify greenhouse gases from that biomass. So it's very synergy. The photographs down below there are actual projects. Just to emphasize, it's the retroreflector mirror where we aim lasers over a kilometre from distance to get signal responses in real time. Speaking about climate change, just to emphasize here, it's a project that we worked on fairly recently. That's in the southeast of England. The coast is eroding at the rate of 10 metres a year. So the caravans along the top of the cliff face, they move them back 10 metres every year. Moving on. So our journey started a number of years ago with a range of research and development projects. For brevity, I've just included the radar ones up here. So there's a range of different use cases, a range of different uses. And what we're doing is we're slowly baby stepping on the steps and understanding the technology, the use cases, how to improve the workflow positions, and how to get more out of the data and the workflow that we're using. I'm not really going to go into any great detail apart from I'm going to highlight just a couple of kind of projects because they're just of real interest to me. There's this one down here, which is the BBC for GGR drone SAR. That's in conjunction with Aperture and Cranfield University. And what we're looking at is we're calculating the biomass above ground and below ground. But at the same time, we're also calculating moisture within the miscanthus. If anybody who doesn't know what miscanthus is, it's an energy crop. So it's like a willow. It grows at a phenomenal rate. So it grows to about 3 meters high in the space of about 3 or 4 months. And what we do is it lasts about 20 years. So the rhizome, they cut the crop, harvest the crop, the rhizome then produces the next batch. And that lasts for about 20 years. So understanding the crop dynamics within the first year particularly is really important for optimizing the growth and the benefits, not only for the energy from the crop itself, but for the conditioning of the soil from the rhizome. So understanding the underground, below ground structures. So for that project, that's the first phase is almost completed, and we're in what we've done is we've done about 3 or 4 missions at different times of years to understand the different crop conditions and growth rates, whatever, try and understand there. What you're seeing there in this in a very kind of tiny picture here is that's the part of the test area. So each field test area is about 5 by 5 meters, and each area you can see how many areas that we're looking at there. In each area, you've got a different type of miscanthus, a different treatment of the miscanthus, and kind of different environmental conditions for that. So what we're doing is it's a great example, it's a great use of the technology. We can run the technology and run statistical analysis on each of the different types to see if we can get the optimal environments. The next stage is to really, which is going to be next year, which is going to be really getting to grips with the ground truthing and the use of the below ground SAR Tomography environments. Ground truthing is really important. In this project so far, we haven't done a huge amount of ground truthing because the field support teams from the university all seem to take the samples in the wrong places. But we'll get there in the end. We'll get there in the end. I'll speak to it. So we can't do this on our own. We're a very small company. So we kind of treat research and development, commercialization of technologies, with collaborators, we're a family. I hope today that we're kind of part of that family and we can kind of help and collaborate with each other as well. I don't have all of the answers. In fact, I only have a few of the answers. So speaking with you and collaborating with you kind of brings me closer to that commercialization and finding solutions for these clients. Typically, the clients that we tend to work with, we work from, rather than an academic up, we work from the client back. So we understand what the client wants to do, and then we try and use the toolbox that we've got available to us to try and find a solution. But equally, we work with a whole bunch of universities in the UK and internationally to help us achieve them. Ones along the bottom are what I would call our industrial partners. There's a few scattered amongst the other lot there as well. So the one that I want to kind of point out key is RSK. They've been particularly helpful with field campaigns and field missions. And if any of you have done any work with RSK before, you realize that they're a 4 billion a year turnover company with 350 different businesses in environmental science. So there's a real need to work with them to understand what it is that they need and whether we've got a solution here to help them. So we're on that journey with them. Sorry, I'm just going to rewind just a little bit. I missed out one of the important factors here is that the work today isn't just myself as part of this family. So the work is also in conjunction with Central Alliance, Radaz, and Stirling University. And Gian Carlos, who's going to be speaking later on, has made some major contributions as part of this project. So hopefully you won't double up too much. If there's any technical stuff, ask Gian, don't ask me. Sorry, swinging back here. Okay, the question is beavers and badgers and other burrowing animals, but the two hot topics of beavers and badgers. Hopefully you all know what a beaver and a badger is. I won't go to, I might have a picture later on, but anyway, the use cases are up there on the board. The first one is ecological. which is we need to know where these animals are located. And it's critical for infrastructure resilience, risk of ground failure, risk of embankment failure is becoming a growing problem, particularly with kind of climate change. We're seeing a lot of movement in animal migrations, and they're moving closer to infrastructure developments. So we've been having requests from all over Europe kind of asking for assistance in this kind of area. The other one is a lot of these organizations, particularly university. I said that we worked with Stirling University. For the first 6 months working with Stirling University, I wasn't aware that the key professor was right next door to the professor in beaver science. So it was an amazing coincidence. But, anyway. Right, there you go. There's a badger. Do you get badgers across here in Brazil?
No.
No badgers. No. Anything similar?
Similar, yes. Not big.
All of these animals are protected animals, so we're not allowed to, well, certainly in the UK, we're not allowed to touch them, we're not allowed to hold them, we're not allowed to go near them, we're not allowed to go into the burrows, we're not allowed to disturb their habitats. It's just, no, we can't do any of that, otherwise it's a criminal offence. So it's a double whammy, knowing that there's an animal there, and you can't do anything about it unless you have a license. And it's causing an impact to your transport infrastructure. So just to emphasize, this is the common concept model that we're working for. What is a badger burrow and how big is it? What sort of impact does it have? So a badger burrow might have 2 or 3 entrances. Those entrances might be as big as the badger, obviously, otherwise it wouldn't get in, but no bigger than that. And it does flush in, so that 30 centimeters in diameter. It always takes down away, and it always prefers sandy soil, but it also works in clay soils as well. It always randomly digs down at an angle, is it 15 to 25 degrees? So we know that the depth of the angle of the burrow, what that is. It's more steeper, it's more shallower, that's what it is. There might be variations, so in real life it might decide to burrow down and hit a rock, and then go around that rock, or a tree stump, or what have you, but typically that's it. The burrow itself, the chamber, they might have more than one chamber, so you might have a chamber for its sleeping. You might have a chamber that's used for storing its food. You might have a chamber for its latrine, even. Anyway, you might have a chamber for its cubs, you might have a little crèche. There's a whole family arrangement in here, and sometimes they can enter burrows together. So overall, you're looking at not just a single hole and kind of burrow chamber, you're looking at a massive network. It's very complex. And they will typically live in clusters or groups, which I'll show you in a wee bit. Interconnected. So I'm going to switch over to beavers. This is your education, ecological education today. They go to the SAR quite soon. Beavers are quite different. There's a beaver up there, cute. The beaver burrows, they work differently. They work from the river's edge or the drain edge, and they will typically drill a burrow up the way from underwater, but not always underwater, and they will burrow up the way, not down the way, up the way. And again, they've got a preference of an angle of building a tunnel. They've got a certain length of that tunnel as well. So typically we're looking at anywhere between 2 and 10 meters for a tunnel. These things are quite immense. So I've got some interesting pictures of a tray line with an effect of burrowing on the sign up there. This is related to the trout project that I'm going to be speaking about in a second. These are burrows of beavers right away along that railway track. So when we did the ecological survey, we estimated that there was probably about 8 to 9 So if you imagine that that's the entrance, and that's the track right at the top there, and they could burrow up to 10 meters, then that burrow could go quite far into the ground under the rail lines. So what do we do about that? So we've got two methods here. We've got the standard multi-track. This picture here just shows a single, but we use 3 tracks and 3 layers up the way, so different height ranges to get the variation in the incidence angles. Similarly with the helical. With the helical, we'll run a single helical, and then if the batteries and time allow us, we'll also run a secondary helical, which is a wider radius to give us multiple angles of incidence there as well. You'll be aware anyway, we use the C-band and the P-band with the Radaz equipment. The P-band obviously penetrates, and that's what we use most of in the assessment. But we still use the L-band, and we still use the C-band as well. So on the flight mission, first project, this is the Badger project. So 2 missions for the helical. The one on the top right, that covers the area of known Badger activity. So what we need to do is we need to try and find something we could use for training purposes for the neural network. Unfortunately, in this case, the ecologists, for some reason, went off on a tangent and only told us that we found 1. So we only have 1 single sample to do the training with. So all of the work here is pretty much from 1 training sample. So there's a high level of uncertainty attached to them, and potentially there's a lot more work. The good news is that subsequently we find lots of other Badger burrows, and we then read the data using that to help for the CNN training process. The wider angle there was the helical allows us a good level of focus and detail for the areas of known key activity. The linear flights allow us to cover a wider area and give us a broad indication. We can use tomography for that, but it won't be as detailed as we would get with the helical flights. What you don't see in this is, well, you do actually, it's 2 green dots up there. So this is for an electrical installation, high power electricity transformer station. They want to put on a platform, and they want to build their massive towers. These towers are about 50 meters. They want to build roads in there, and they want to find out if there are any Badger issues that they need to take into consideration as part of the licensing for the working conditions. So without further ado, that's just an example of the outcomes from the flights in terms of the synthetic radar in the CL and the P-bands. And that's not them all, that's just some selected, and they're quite small, so you can't see anything from them. You certainly can't spot any Badgers in them. So what we do is we use tomography in the P-band, and what we do is we know that the level of accuracy gets reduced the greater the depth that you go in. So we're quite good at slicing at intervals, at 30 centimeter intervals, and then we'll change that slicing down to about 60 centimeters below that. That gives us a kind of 3-dimensional kind of profile of relative levels of intensity that are all georeferenced. So imagine this as a point cloud. Now we take that single point there for training data. We've got a wee bit of information, but the information that we've got is basically that there's a Badger hole here. It's not really helpful, and it's not really that useful training. So what we do is we run the tomography. This is just a simple section here, and we use the tomography to help us with the training. We run the training for this. I'll stop in the boring slide. This is the training. Because it wasn't enough training, what we did was we used kind of 3 other projects to simulate what a budget cover might look like. Doing a CNN process with 1 was not sufficient. Doing it with 4 is still not sufficient, but it's better than doing it with 1. So this is what we found with the training data and the validation process. We typically find in the flight on the right-hand side, we find kind of 4 Badger burrows, and on the flight on the left-hand side, which was didn't use for validation purposes, we find 4 Badger burrows in that place. What does that mean? That's just a top-down approach. Sorry, I'm going to highlight here. Right. That was a 70% threshold. Because the client wanted to know about relative levels of proximity, so they didn't care how many chambers the Badgers had in this case. They were just looking to find out, is the Badger close, or will it be close to where we're going to be building our stuff? So what we did was we said, right, okay, the data has a high level of uncertainty, but what we're going to do is we're going to reduce the threshold down to 60% rather than 70%. So it's not to say that these are Badger burrows, but there is a possibility that they are Badger burrows, certainly a higher probability than 0. So we've got a map there, and you can see the map slowly developing. I don't know if you can see that in the purple. That's the 60% here. Much food. For the 8 Badger burrows, we produced a tomographic cross section. It's not just a cross section; that's just a representation. So you won't find Badgers in here either. So the blue are low intensity areas where there's more likely to be a void space. And the yellow areas are where we're getting high levels of intensity. We push that into a 3-dimensional model. This is the basic 3-dimensional model. We had a look at that and went, you know what, this really isn't good enough. This looks like a 2-dimensional plan on a 3-dimensional. Let's start kind of working on this in terms of graphical interface. So, and then we produced a completely 3-dimensional model of the Badger burrows. So we've done that for the model, but I don't want to bore you with the model here. But what's really interesting is that we can do a lot with that. We could play around with that. We can undertake another survey in a year's time and find out if that Badger is extending itself or not. There are obviously issues with this. It needs to be filtered, rounded, needs to be tested with that original Badger profile that I showed at the outset. Does it make sense? Is it real? And the real difficulty for us is that because these things are licensed, we can't go in there and find out if there are 3 chambers. We can't go in and find out if it's extended that far because we're not allowed to do that. So in terms of fully ground truthing that, we just can't do. What we can do in the future is maybe corroborate with, say, ground probing radar or electrical magnetics. If I had time, I'd play around with this, but I'm going to get around that. Then what we do is we push that into an HTML for use with the clients. So the clients, instead of having lots of these kind of fuzzy X-ray type pictures, they can have and touch and hold and move in terms of their profile. There you go. It's a 5-3 model of. I'm going to skip that because this is quite important because this is the Never Grill project. Same process again. I'm not going to describe that in any great detail. Here are the beavers that we found in this place after the convolutional neural network process. Here are the cross-referenced kind of survey data. So luckily, when we did the ecological survey after doing the SAR survey, every single one of these positions matched in. And the difference is that when we do the ecological survey, and we're looking at the entrance, we're not looking at the central point. So there's a slight mismatch. And you can see from this, that's the entrance, that's the middle area of the burrow. So the fact that we're not exactly aligned is neither here nor there. The fact that we've got that beaver to This one here looks a weird shape. It doesn't look anything like the beaver burrow kind of profile. This is actually a collapsed burrow, so it's quite important to understand the different conditions of the burrows as well. If it's an intact burrow, then that's great. You can understand it, learn from that, you can use it for training purposes. But equally, if it's a collapsed burrow, then understanding that process as well. This is the other one. This one looks more real. One entrance, one chamber at the end. I think that's an exit rather than a chamber. One key chamber in the middle. So, key conclusions. I think I've got half a minute left. These are early processes in the use of advanced tomography and CNN processes using the radar. But we're quite comfortable that we're on the right route. But we also equally understand that there's quite a lot of improvement that needs to get done in terms of the data, either in terms of processing, training, workflow, speeding up that workflow. So hopefully we can speak later on over a beer and find out a wee bit more. I just said that. And then I'll just leave that on the screen. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, William. Now we are open for questions.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Questions?
Thank you for a great presentation. I think you said that you were working with multiband SAR. Can you comment about the different bands and how they were used, or if these are mainly for the P-band use and C-band?
Yeah, in this case, mainly the P-band that we were using. We also use the other bands for perspective. And in this case, in order to make sure that we have complete ground truthing and georeferencing, we also use the LiDAR survey as well, particularly in relation to the train line, because the models that we had didn't account for the hump in the train line. So it's important to understand. But one of the key issues with the data that we're finding is that we need to be much careful about how we filter our data, because we get a lot of intensity and signal response back from the railway lines and the fences next to the railway lines. So we're spending a wee bit of time trying to filter out those anomalies. In fact, I had a chat with Christian last night about that. He said he's going to be straight on the case.
Any other question?
Very short question. Very impressive images, this tomographic images. Do you think this approach, processing this experience data, can be extended for ultrasonic inspections of body or X-ray?
Yes, absolutely. I didn't have enough time to tell you the story about how we ended up in this position of looking at beavers and badgers. They came from a challenge statement. And the challenge was, can we delineate the location and the extent of beaver burrows in a riparian area next to a kind of river or the nature-based agency in Scotland? And we thought, we could use a number of techniques. We thought, can we use LiDAR? Yeah, but it's only going to give us a surface. Can we use sonar? And we thought, yeah, but it's only going to give us 5%. But ultimately, the same workflow could be applied.
I mean, one organs in human body.
Oh, right. Wow. Yeah, well, that is not a use case that I thought.
Why not? It can't be the wavelengths.
Yeah. Yes. That's one for sure.
Yes, we are working.
Yeah. Very good.
Congratulations for your presentation, very good. I work in an oil and gas company, pipelines, and I wonder if your technology is able to locate with precision holes in the ground or camouflage excavations near pipelines.
I would say possibly. I can use the word possibly because it's taken us a long time to reach this level of basic credibility for the badger burrows and beaver burrows. I think we need to understand the training regime, the soil conditions, the environmental conditions, but theoretically, yes, it is.
The sugar cane plantation.
Oh, yes, yes, indeed. We did have a project planned for Morocco to look at irrigation systems. Unfortunately, that project was shelved because our equipment was seized at customs. It might happen again in the future, but it is possible.
Maybe 30 centimeters.
Oh, yeah.
Holes
Yes,
to reach the pipeline,
yes, it depends on the diameter of the holes.
30 centimeters.
Should be possible.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, I would like to thank you, William, once again, and a round of applause.